Good morning, everyone. It is Michelle Badusky, and it is a absolutely beautiful Canada Day here in Rivers, Manitoba. Now, it's going to be a super busy day. I've been invited to take part in Canada Day celebrations all across the Spruce Woods riding. You're going to see me in Glenborough and Holland. You're going to see me in Shiloh, and I'm going to be everywhere. But I wanted to just take a few minutes to kind of reflect a little bit on why Canada Day is so important to me and what it means for me. So, just a little bit of background on my family history, and this is why Canada Day means so much, is that we know now, growing up, I didn't have a huge connection to my family's heritage or culture. It was very difficult to get my grandparents to talk about their past. They're all gone now. And so the last few years, we've been doing a lot of genealogy research and found some really cool things that explained a lot of the things that happened when I was growing up. For example, my dad's family, my dad, Roger Gagnon, his family, like his dad's family, we trace their heritage all the way back to France. They were settlers. They were here at the beginning of colonization, not something to be proud of, but they were a part of that. And they were voyageurs. That's how they came to Manitoba from their settlement in Quebec. They came from France, settled in Quebec, and were voyageurs, and that's how they settled here in Richer, Manitoba. That's where my great grandfather, my grandfather, my dad grew up, was in Richer, Manitoba. And I found that really interesting because we don't know a lot about my grandmother's history and where her family came from. She just kind of appeared. And right now I've actually asked the St. Boniface Historical Society to trace her roots and see where those connections came from. But my grandmother was also in that area. And I think it's really interesting when you look back at the history of Canada, but even just my own personal history. It came from French settlers and First Nations people coming together, working together, and if it wasn't for the compassion and generosity of our First Nations people, my grandfather would never have existed because the voyageurs would never have survived. And that was the founding of this country. And that's a dark history, I understand that, but that's where we need to acknowledge it and recognize how important that is to all of us. And, I'm sitting here in Treaty 2 territory. This is traditional lands of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabeg. This was a coming together place. This is the homeland of the Red River Métis. And, and I know people from so many different First Nations. I know Métis, I know Inuit, and that coming together, of working together for reconciliation, of acknowledging our dark past here in Canada and working together to not just acknowledge it, but change. You can't change history, but you can change the future. And by working together and collaborating to make the world a better place, that's what reconciliation is all about. And we are living in the province that really symbolizes the coming together and the working of different people from different backgrounds, different beliefs. They even have maybe different goals, but they still work together. And that's how Manitoba was founded. And I love it when you look back in that history. And it gets even a little weirder. My mother was actually adopted. Well, she wasn't even adopted. She was raised by another family, and we never could find a lot of history on her birth parents until just a few years ago when I did a DNA search and was matched, and it was this big trajectory. And we discovered that my mother's grandparents immigrated here between World War I and World War II from Poland. They came over here as Polish Jews, seeking refuge in between the two very dark wars, which we know were very scary and deadly times for a lot of people, a lot of Europeans, especially Jewish, and they came to Canada. My mother was born to their children. So they settled in Winnipeg, and both sets of grandparents settled in the same area. They came around the same time. They had children that grew up together and ended up having my mom in 1947, just after World War II. And that's another piece of dark history for Canada, is how we treated our Jewish people back in the days of World War II and even post-war. And I'm learning more and more about that history. And when they had this baby, they decided that she would be safer and better off being raised by French Catholics. And they gave her to the people that I grew up knowing as my grandparents to raise. Not a formal adoption, but she was raised by them. And now we're currently working on researching that history of my family's side as well. And it overwhelms me when I think of what they must have been going through when they came to Canada in fear for their lives and their safety, and when they actually gave away a child to for a better life out of hope. And again, dark history, but it also shows the resilience and compassion of this country to welcome new people, to work together, and to come together for the benefit. It doesn't mean that we are forgetting, when we celebrate Canada Day, it doesn't mean we're forgetting that dark history. What it means is that we understand how great this country is, even with all its warts and flaws, and that we're committed to working together to make it better. Now, my husband is a second generation Canadian. His grandfather immigrated here from the Ukraine. And that's why if you look at my last name, it's Badusky. That's my husband's name. I took that when we got married. And that to me, again, my whole family is about coming together and working together, and about the compassion and generosity and the togetherness of Canada. Every part of my family has been all about that. Now, that doesn't mean there is no dark history. Absolutely. And I think we need to work and to acknowledge it, to remember it, and never repeat it again. And that's what true reconciliation is. So we can still celebrate being Canadian today. We can celebrate the great things about this country while still recognizing that we have a lot of work to do. And I don't want you to feel like you can't do that. I am a very proud Canadian. With all of our dark past and all of the things we have yet to do, this is still one of the greatest countries in the world. And I think Manitoba is one of the greatest provinces in that country. And we need to be proud. We need to celebrate. Today is a day of celebration. We are still dealing with a lot of global issues. People are still coming to this country for fear of their lives. All you have to do is look to the Ukraine to see what true oppression and fear is. The fact that we are able to protest here in Canada about freedoms and all of the things that you see shows how free we are. That's the irony of it. And today is not a day about protesting. Today is not a day about division. I know that a lot of people feel like this country, I posted something the other day. A lot of people feel that, there's nothing to be proud of in Canada. And if that's how you feel, I'm so sorry for you. All you have to do is look around beyond your backyard, beyond this country, and see what's really happening in the world, to see how fortunate and blessed we are to be Canadian, or to be in this country if you are a newcomer. I have a very good friend of mine who is one of the smartest people I know, and she uses the term that she won the birth lottery being born here in Canada. And I feel the same way. And for those of you who are new to this country, welcome. I hope that you are treated with as much compassion and generosity and welcoming vibes as my ancestors and my husband's ancestors were. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. My children wouldn't be here. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. But today, let's come together and be proud of everything that we have done, everything we are building, and work together. I want to work with anyone who's going to help make my community better. Whether I like them, whether I disagree with them, doesn't matter. If we can work together to make our community better for the people that live here, that should be our job. And today, let's celebrate that coming together. And I hope to see you out and about. If you see me, I'm wearing my big Canada shirt. I'm usually easy to spot because I talk a lot. Feel free to come up to me, say hi, say Happy Canada Day, whatever. I'm here. I want to hear about all the great things today that make Canada great. And you know what? Manitoba is great too. We don't have to make it great. It is great. We just have to work together to create that same feeling of welcome and generosity. And to our newcomers, I welcome you to our country. I hope you are feeling that. And to our First Nations and our Métis, our Inuit, all of our Indigenous people. I want to thank you for welcoming us to your land today to help us celebrate. We know we have a lot of work to do, and we know there was a lot of wrongs done, but I'm committed to making sure those wrongs never happen again and work with the same spirit that your ancestors did when my family came here and created the opportunity for me to even be born. So I want to thank you, and I want to welcome everybody to a beautiful Canada Day. Remember to wear your sunscreen, drink lots of water. Um, it's still pretty quiet in my house. I think that the Glenborough Derby, the demo derby last night, I think they broke my children. They are exhausted. I'm not sure if they're going to make it to round two today, but if you see me out and about without my children, it's because they're broken. All right. See you later. Happy Canada Day, everyone. Celebrate safe. If you are drinking, do not drive. We have had too much tragedy on our roads already today, or not today, but in the last little while. Just please don't. There's no reason for it. If you are drinking, drink responsibly, don't drive. And if you are driving, show patience. There's a lot of traffic on those roads, and we want today to be memorable for all the right reasons. Happy Canada Day.